like to call to order the Pentucket Regional School Committee Business Meeting of January 11th, 2022. Roll call. Wayne Adams is not here. Joanna Blanchard is not here. Emily Dwyer.
I'm here.
Marie Pilzani. Dick Hodges.
Here also.
Chris Markins.
Here.
Ashley McLaughlin.
Here.
Chris Redding.
Here.
Tina Trotta here. Okay, could I please have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Seconded. Is there any discussion? Chris?
So with regard to the D policies, Dick, I know you said that there were a few things that I had commented on that got changed. D, that's the financial one, not B. I don't know if those are things that still need to be looked at by the policy committee.
I think we're all right with the D, because a lot of it was kind of typo, spelling, grammar.
I think there were a couple things about putting in the exact language from like the regional agreement, a couple word typos, I agree.
Well, I mean, if we're not ready to do that, then I'm going to ask that the D, E, L, H all be put on the next consent agenda. And that'll give all of us an opportunity to do our homework and make the final, that'll also save my comments when you ask. That'll give us a chance to finish this up and be done just in time for the 5-year review.
Okay, so you want to approve without the D policies? Is that what I'm saying, hearing?
I'm fine with that.
Okay. All in favor? Okay, D policies will be on the next agenda. Subcommittee updates. Wayne is not here. Anyone have a finance committee update? We'll be hearing from Greg later.
We're still signing papers
Okay.
so that people get paid.
Teaching, learning, and accountability.
We don't have an update.
Okay. Policy, do we have right there?
Yeah, I've just shared with you what our intent is.
Okay. D, L, and H for next.
Yes, please. And any of you that see anything, feel free to jump in and make those amendments, corrections. Much appreciated.
Does everybody have access to D, E, L, and H?
I think only D.
I think only D.
Yeah, I'll give you access to E, L, and H.
Thank you.
They're very short.
Okay. Communications. I think Joanna is not here. Okay. Strategic plan, and I know Wayne is that person. Do you have any?
Yeah, we've met a few times, and Ashley, myself, Marie, and Wayne have met, and we're slated to meet again tomorrow. We're moving right along in the superintendent's goals. I just included in there the updated timeline that we came up with at the last meeting.
Okay, great. Thank you. We have public comment now. I just want to remind everyone of Robert's rules. Everyone, when you come up one at a time. When I state your name, Mrs. Napa has given me the names of the 4 people speaking. You have 3 minutes. You need to state your name and where you live. And per policy BEDH, if you're going to come up and speak about something that someone has already spoken about, and you need to have new information for us, it's the policy. So please be respectful. And we have a very heavy agenda, so be respectful of everyone's time. Thank you. And now I have Diane Settlemore.
Yes.
Good evening. My name is Diana Settlemore. I am the mother of a 4th grader and a 1st grader at the Bagnell School. My husband and I moved to Groveland 3 years ago. Initially, we had concerns moving our children out of the Georgetown public schools. However, we've noticed a dramatic improvement in our children's public school education. Our children would not be a success story if it was not for the educators at the Pentucket schools. I am an attorney for the Department of Children and Families, and my husband is a small business owner. Both of my children have IEPs, and my fourth grader is in a sub-separate classroom with specialized education. This year, she finally felt comfortable reading out loud to me. It brought tears to my eyes. Without the support of her teachers and paraprofessionals, she would not have progressed as much as she had during the pandemic-stricken past 2 years. My younger daughter is in the first grade and has similar learning struggles. However, I'm no longer frantic with worry due to my fourth grader's success. The most important values we have as a town is to cherish our children and to create a public education system for all of our children to succeed. With the Student Opportunity Act money coming into the Pentucket school system, over the next 5 to 7 years, we should and can afford to retain our teachers and pay a living wage. They have earned it. Why? Because they are the best. There is no school like the Bagnell School. It is a special place where children thrive. It is an embarrassment to this district and to these teachers that our teachers and paraprofessionals are undercompensated. They are not asking for much. A paltry 2% don't make a dent. They deserve more, and the refusal to include longevity is a slap in the face for career educators. Retainment of amazing teachers and paraprofessionals that go above and beyond every day is of the utmost importance during this countrywide teacher shortage, where many districts are competing to hire educators offering higher pay, longevity, stipends, and more. Members of the Pentucket School Committee, thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my children's educational success at the Bagnell School. I implore the school committee to respect the agreed upon 2% raise and to include the longevity language to retain our beloved career teachers and paraprofessionals. Please settle the contract with the teachers so that they can go back to doing what they do best, and that's teaching. Thank you for your time.
Nicole Hawes is next, please.
Good evening. My name is Nicole Haas, and I'm the mother of 2 boys, both of whom attend the Bagnell Elementary School. I had a much different statement to share with all of you, but brevity is not a strength of mine. With a 3-minute time limit, I feared I wouldn't be able to get to the point of my statement before my time was up. I will cut right to the end. My husband and I are both high school teachers. Throughout the pandemic, we have had to pour our minds, our hearts, and our souls into meeting the increasingly complex needs of our students. We've taught remotely and in person. We've spent hours on Zoom meetings and restructuring our lessons and assessments. We've supported our students academically and emotionally. When we come home from work, each day we are drained and we are exhausted. The one thing, maybe the only thing, that we haven't had to worry about throughout this pandemic is whether our boys' needs are being met at school, both in the classroom and outside of it, by the teachers, specialists, and in-school support providers. Their teachers, like all teachers, have been pushed to the brink of exhaustion and burnout since the schools closed in March of 2020 and then reopened, drastically changed in September of 2020. They've learned new technologies, restructured lessons and instruction, found new and different ways to connect with their students. They're addressing gaps in learning and social emotional growth. They're teaching students who haven't had a full year of school since the 2018-2019 school year, having to teach or reteach material 2 or 3 grade levels below theirs, while attempting to teach on grade level material while trying to prepare for MCAS. They're navigating challenges brought on by changes at the state and local level, sometimes with little to no notice. They've done all of these things professionally and passionately. They've met their students' needs, their academic needs, their emotional needs. They've supported their students and students' families, their colleagues, their own children and families, all while protecting their own health and aiming to maintain a balance in their lives to address mental health challenges that living through a pandemic has brought. We need to do more than simply sing their praise and thank them for their hard work. We need to show them just how much we appreciate them and all that they do by granting them the fair and reasonable contract as they have proposed. We need to do, they have enough on their plates without having to think about, worry about, or fight for this. The thought of losing any of these amazing educators that have had such a powerful impact on my children and the lives of all of their students to another district is devastating. Unfortunately, that is exactly what is going to happen. These educators have worked too hard to stay in a district that refused to pay them for what they're worth. At the last school committee meeting, the teachers presented gifts that represent the tasks they perform outside of their contract hours and the things that they do that are above and beyond. They didn't need to do that. The truth is, they are the gifts. They are the ones who shape the lives of our children, helping them to grow and learn, making them better people than when they entered their classroom. Please do not make them wait any longer. Do the right thing and take care of the ones who have taken such good care of our children.
Thank you, Ms. Osborne. Next up, I have Beth Greenhagen. Please state your name and your address. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Beth Greenhagen. I live in Groveland. I'm the mother of 2 children at the Bagnell School, where they both excelled. I've also been a special educator for 22 years. And I have to tell you, teaching's not easy. And the past year has been the hardest. This past week and a half has been almost unbearable. The fact that you're trying to deny the Pentucket teachers a mere 2% raise in longevity is unconscionable. They deserve so much more. They are not even paid a competitive wage at this point. Pentucket teachers are among the lowest paid in the region. If you don't believe me, look at the Mass Department of Ed. You will find that Pentucket teacher salaries are at the bottom when compared to similar districts in our region. This is not only unfair to our teachers, it prevents Pentucket from attracting and retaining top teachers. Our children in our community deserve better. We ask our teachers not only to educate our children, but we continue to ask so much more of them. Currently, we're asking them to face kids who can't keep their masks over their noses, let alone over their mouths, in the midst of a deadly pandemic. Not only that, we ask them to deal with the students' increasingly rising mental health and behavioral issues. We continue to ask our teachers to do more and more and more with no adequate compensation for this. Through all these challenges, the Pentucket teachers have shown up every day and done their job above and beyond. My children still report that their teachers are cheerful and helpful despite the enormous stress they are under. I ask you, how is it okay to demand that our teachers give our students a high-quality education, meet the increasing mental health demands of their students, and put themselves at daily risk and not grant them a reasonable compensation? The cost of living went up 3% last year, which means the 2% raise they're asking for is actually a cut. Please, as a fellow educator and a parent, I'm begging you to give the Pentucket teachers at least what they're asking for, which is much less than they deserve.
Thank you, Ms. Greenhagen. Mr. Wendt, you're up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Michael Wendt, President of the Pentucket Association of Teachers. Very briefly, just on behalf of the PAT, I want to thank the parents for coming out tonight and supporting the teachers. Thank you all. also want to thank the school committee and the district administration for continuing to work through this difficult negotiations process with us, as well as the budgetary challenges that the district faces that we are all aware of. Our members look forward to having an agreement in place that values them as true partners in the future success of the Pentucket district. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, everybody. And now we're on to new business. Oh, sorry, Superintendent. I was thinking about you.
Oh, forget about me.
Superintendent and student rep news.
So, Madam Chair, thank you very much. I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Linehan, who can fill us in on the student perspective of what's going on here in the district. Sorry, buddy. You all right? Okay, all right.
All right, so I just have a few quick things going on right now. January is not too exciting of a month, but we're getting through it. We're going. So we're almost actually halfway through the year, which is really weird to think about, but it's also pretty exciting because we're kind of starting to think of the new things coming up. So a few of us actually just got back from Danvers. We were at the yacht club, which is where we're going to have prom in the spring. So we were checking it out, and we're starting to plan prom, which is really, really exciting, especially since we didn't get to go last year. So we're very excited that we get to start thinking about that now and looking forward to what's to come. And then also the yearbook committee. We've been working pretty hard recently, and we're kind of taking it a step up now. We're starting to get in the senior photos and bios, and we started the superlative stuff, so that's been pretty exciting. Everyone's talking about that in the halls. So it's good to kind of get back to normal things again and to see everyone excited about just kind of silly stuff like that, but it's still good to see. And then also I just wanted to say, I know we had the presentation about the new website update, and I've actually heard a lot of good feedback. My dad was telling me the other day that he loves it now, and even students I've heard, they're like, oh, did you see that? And they're like, oh, look, my picture's there. So it's just, I really like it a lot. It's a lot more modern now, and I think it's a lot easier to kind of go about. And then some of the photos that I've been taking for the yearbook and for our school news site, like flash on the screen. So I thought that's kind of a good way to keep it interactive. So then that kind of made me think that I'm going to try to work to get, we call it the Pentucket profile, which is like our newspaper website. So I think I might try to get that like linked onto it, because I think that's kind of a good news outlet too. Because we kind of write about what's going on around school, so I thought that that would be a good addition to that. But yeah, that's all I have for now. Thanks, Hannah.
Thank you, Hannah. So I'll just mention, Madam Chair, that Hannah, if you want to have that happen, we can make it happen pretty quickly.
Yeah, I figured.
Yeah, that'd be great. I think that'd be a great opportunity. Yeah. So Madam Chair, just going back, obviously, I like what we have on the speakers up here saying the last week and a half as educators, we all know what that's just been a whirlwind storm, depending on, I felt like we were back in the summer going into the 2020-2021 school year, where all the rules were coming out and things were all of a sudden changing. But just wanted to go out, and I know we received some emails about COVID protocols, and just as some things have changed, but the overall majority of things have stayed the same. When we're inside, we're required to mask. When we're outside, there is no mask mandate to wear for people to wear things outside. Remote learning, sometimes you hear those, you get emails about that request. The state does not allow for remote learning, so that is just not an option that we have. Test and stay protocol, that is a very specific state protocol. We don't get to veer from that. We can't just give tests out to whoever wants. You have to qualify. There's a protocol to determine whether or not you qualify. So just being able to go and test everyone, not something that we can do. Also, I know you've got requests for testing all students and all teachers. So that concept of pool testing, and I think long ago, I say long ago, relative to the pandemic, long ago, we had that conversation about we just do not have, we were not going to put and ask personnel to try to handle all the pool testing, all the requirements that were needed for that. Not to mention, a parent has to give consent for the child to participate in pool testing. And if they don't give consent, it doesn't work. So we were smart enough, I'd say, to just reach out to some of our peers who were doing it and got the feedback from them in districts our size and a little bit bigger about how effective it was. And it just was not super effective for the amount of time and stress you were causing other personnel. So, but the biggest challenge, honestly, that we have is contact tracing. You have employees, nurses specifically, but also administrators just trying to do everything they can. So when there's a positive case, you have to track down where that person may be, who they were around, and then try to make all those contacts. And you also have to find out, was the person they were around, were they vaccinated, not vaccinated? Because again, there's protocols you follow. So all of that, I know there's certainly frustration. I know in some towns, like some towns across the district now, across the state, and even in our district, they no longer do contact tracing because it's impossible to do. And yet we're still required to do it inside our schools. So that is, without question, one of the biggest taxing pieces on our school personnel, particularly our nurses. Before we left for break, we were testing about 100 students a day. And just up until the day before break, we weren't turning out any positive tests on those. But the day before break, we actually did. So, I mean, I think it's, in years past, all those students would have been sent home for at least 10 days. I'm glad we have it in there because the students are able to stay because they don't have COVID. But you know, when you get these emails, I just wanted to just go over that just as a reminder about what are those protocols? Why do we have the things we have, and what are we doing? You know, and you can obviously, I say this every week, every time we meet, you can go up to the COVID dashboard last week. Again, there's a huge backlog of yet to be confirmed cases, but last week matched our highest week, which is the week after vacation. And this week, I'd say started off slow, but I think we all know, like, there's so much out there right now. And it's an airborne thing that seems, what we've heard medically is that it's up in the nasal passage, upper respiratory, so it's more airborne than the first strain. So it may not be as deadly as the first, but still, you know, we have to take the same precautions until we figure out what's going on. Speaking of, go ahead, yes.
Oh, well, I just have a COVID-related question, so if you're not done talking about it.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Oh, is it, so is it the state that came up with the protocol, I guess, that vaccinated kids don't have to be test and stay? Or is that like the district, or?
No, that's the state. In order to participate in either pool testing or test and stay, we have to, whatever they say for these are the guidelines, that's the only way we get to have those tests. The alternative to doing testing whoever we want to do would be for the district to go out and buy all of its own tests, which obviously would be, for us, extremely expensive. But yes, that's their protocol.
Chris?
So with regard to the dashboard and the numbers.
Oh, go ahead.
So I'm asking the question because I experienced it before Christmas. I came down with COVID, my daughter had it. We called the school, let them know, we took the at-home test. When we tried to get a PCR test, they said, if you have a positive at-home test, then you don't need a PCR test. Like, that's a waste of resources. So I agree with that. But then that number never actually made it into the school. Like, we did the proper thing. She was out of school. She called friends. And I do think they did the contract tracing through the high school. But I guess, what are we requiring of students who are students, teachers, staff, whatever, in those situations where they do test positive, but they're not making it into the numbers necessarily? I don't know, like at this point, she did her work from home because she felt fine, but just wondering, like as a district, how are we dealing with that situation that I think is probably not getting to me?
Yeah, so we take our guidance right from our public health officers, right? So, and that guidance is, we're required to report confirmed and positive cases. So if it's not confirmed, we don't report it.
Confirmed by the state.
By the state. So if it's not confirmed, and it's confirmed, we double check with our public health number. It has to be a PCR test that confirms, otherwise it doesn't come in. So the backlog, I think last time we said we had 27 cases that were still backlogged. That was trailing back to November, sometime in November, come through. And obviously, when they initially go in, like in your situation, that'd be a situation, call goes in, So the administrator will put in, yep, we have one that's pending, and then they just wait to have it clear. Whoever they contact confirms it, and it gets confirmed. So sometimes it's a quick one, because some people went and just got PCRs instead of the quick swabs. So the PCRs come pretty quickly, but the home test, unless it's a PCR, it will only sit there as confirmed. And that was part of the conversation about the last meeting, is if we start changing, all of a sudden the data that we have from the beginning of the number of cases to the data where we are, it's completely, it's all over the place. It's not apples to apples. It's apples compared to apples and oranges. Some of those rapid tests aren't confirmed. And even more to the point, the PCR, is extraordinarily accurate, and the home test is not. So the number of false positives you would get would be adding up into the total. So for those reasons, we only add in a PCR confirmed. But yes, from the student staff standpoint, if I swabbed and I tested positive on a swab, then yes, I have to be out for that time period. 6th day, fully masked for the next 5. Good question, though. That comes up a lot. I know that was one of the messages we got as well. About the dashboard not being up to date, just so you know. There's an alert on that. So anytime an administrator puts something in, it alerts me. And I go in and I have to report to the state. I report to the state daily. You don't have to do it weekly, but I don't like to have things backing up. So I get it, I report it in. So whatever's up on the dashboard is up to date as the last message I got in confirmed cases. All right. So, not yet done.
I didn't see it.
Oh, okay, all right. So the mask requirement, the state did extend the mask requirement through February 28th, 2022, so that will keep on going. The CREST Collaborative, so we talked about this with the North Shore Educational Collaborative. The CREST Collaborative is another one of our out-of-district placement collaboratives. I shared with you both the annual report and their fiscal year 21 audit. You have both of those. If you need a hard copy, I get that to Mary Ann, and you can find that in the office, and that goes for anyone who might be willing to see that. Just from schools, I got a message from over at Bagnell, and I think Mr. Day did a great job. Just wanted to give a shout out, as all the administrators do, but really just hats off to all of our para-educators. They have been every day showing up, covering classes, doing everything they have to do in order to keep things running. So just a huge thank you, Mr. Day, myself, to all the para-educators and all the work we do. It's been fabulous. And Mr. Day just said, particularly in his situations, because of them, that they've been able to keep school up and running. So that is the news I have for you, Madam Chair.
Great. Thank you very much. Okay, now we have new business. Our first order of business is to recognize Ruth Beaton, the U.S. Field Hockey Coach of the Year Award.
Mrs. Beaton, would you come up here, please? So, Madam Chair, as Mrs. Beaton comes up here and stands in front of us, I just want to make a few remarks. It's a rare opportunity for me to talk about an educator, a colleague, a friend. But Mrs. Beaton grew up in the town of West Newbury. She was an outstanding student athlete. Graduated in the class of, am I allowed to say this or not? The class of 79, right? So you graduate class 79. So she goes off to college, decides, hey, you know what? I'm going to go into finance. Works in finance for a little while. And then in 1990, is that right? Decides that she wants to come back to her alma mater and help out with varsity cheerleading, winter only. So in 1990, starts as the varsity winter cheerleading coach. And shortly thereafter, 94? In 1994, becomes the head coach, the varsity head coach of the women's field hockey team. So, in addition to that, while that's all going on, she's volunteering at Page School. So in 1993, she's going to start volunteering, and in 2002, becomes a substitute teacher up here at the high school. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. I did not. So all of that, and then she gets this crazy idea that, hey, you know what I love to do? I love these kids so much that I've been coaching. I want to teach. So she was able to convince the likes of Bill Martin, Mrs. Gaffney, let me see, Mr. Canepa, Liz Perry, Mr. Morris, and others, to write her letters of recommendation to get the job. And sure enough, for the 2003-2004 school year, she starts off teaching with us. Well, she took over a program in field hockey that had not had any much success. I think maybe 500 might have been one of the best years. But this year in particular was a very extraordinary year to start, even before we get into the, I recall, I walked out one of the first, I think it was your first practice, out on the track, and the girls are running and they're doing their drills, and that's the first time I think I heard about that there was no field. Because she found out the week before, or a week and a half or 2 weeks before, that Amesbury Sports Park, where they would normally go and practice, was not allowing them because they were working on their construction project. So it was a big scramble, and eventually they find a home over at Stevens Field in Merrimack. The student athletes that played for her, heart and grit. And that's what I'll leave it at that. They had heart, they had grit, unbelievable. Dedicated, and that is something that very much started from the top down. From Coach Beaton, Coach Corey, Coach Fry, just all the way, just the kids just took it and ran with it, that whole personality. Sunday mornings, while I'm out there playing tennis, they're out there on the field practicing. So it was amazing. So then we start getting into the season. September, 7-1. Their one loss is a 1-0 to Triton. And we know how we feel. Like Triton, that's a tough loss for us. That's our Thanksgiving game. Like that's a. So that was the first loss. But just 1 week after that, it was a Friday loss, and then the following Friday, a huge win against Central Catholic, 4-3. That's a massive win. Central Catholic, extremely good private school, and for them to go in and beat Central Catholic, I think that more than anything just gave the team such a huge boost. During that month, they outscored their opponents 19-5. And in those games, 5 of those games were shutouts. So then we move into the month of October. So in October, they go undefeated. They did have one tie, Linfield, 9-0-1. And they beat Triton, 1-0. So in that month of October, they outscore their opponents 24-2. And they're just on absolute fire. And then we come into the playoffs. And again, you have to think about this. And Pentucket's not, we've not had this. Like, we just haven't, nothing we've ever done, nothing we've ever had before. So we start off, we get a bye in round one. I'm sorry, they get a bye in round one. See, I love to do that. So the girls they get a bye in round one. In round 2, they defeat Norwell 5-0. And in round of 16, they defeated private school Bishop Stang 3-0. Then they go to Foxborough. Now, what's interesting about Foxborough, and this was over, that was over at Haverhill Stadium. What's interesting about this game, at Haverhill High School, yeah. So what's interesting about this game is they knocked off Dighton Rehoboth, and Dighton Rehoboth was the #1 seed in the entire bracket on the right side of the bracket. So you don't know what to expect. But they just kept on running. They beat Foxborough 4-0. And that propels us into the semifinals, the Final Four, where we run into Watertown. Watertown, going into there, had beat their previous 3 opponents by a total score of 18-0. It was 6-0, 6-0, in each of those games. So you're going into perennial powerhouse. You have Pentucket, who has never, this is on uncharted waters. And, I mean, it was an awesome game. It was an early goal that Watertown scored to give them, and they ended up, there was no other goals. It was a 1-0 finish. So they finished their season 19-2-1. That includes the playoffs. 19-2-1. So that by itself is just an unfathomably exceptional accomplishment. And for all that, I know Coach Beaton has been recognized, got awards, but I think the reason why she's here tonight is that there's these websites that go on. And Field Hockey has certain websites that everybody goes on to, and she was recognized as the United States Field Hockey Coach of the Year. So we've never had that. On behalf of everybody, not just myself, your team, everyone you've ever helped, all the people I went to school with, that you coached, just thank you for everything you've ever done for us. And it's just, Coach Beaton is the epitome of stay at it, it'll work out, stay at it, it'll work out. And they did, and it has. And I'll just one last thing. If there's anybody here other than me who knows the alma mater, we're looking at it. All hail the green and white.
Great job.
Thank you.
Placement, computer teacher.
Next up, we have Brent to discuss the partnership with Mass Insight.
All right. So, tough act to follow. I will not give you the historical backdrop of our work with Mass Insight. But, so we are working, and Dr. Doherty, Robin Doherty had planned to be with us tonight. She is ill, so she's not able to make it tonight. We'll get an opportunity for all of you to meet her soon. But we worked on this together. This has actually been something with the high school administration and department chairs that we've been working on for a couple months. And we look forward to sort of the next steps with working with Mass Insight. Mass Insight is a nonprofit that works not only in Massachusetts but across the country. But specifically, one of their big things they work on is advanced placement work within schools. So we can go to the next slide. There we go. All right. So the partnership opportunities, there's really three major components that we're talking about. Student participation. So what we're looking for is more equitable opportunities for students. In particular, they're looking at math, science, English, the STEM and English AP courses. There are some other opportunities that relate to social studies and some of the others, but the primary focus of Mass Insight is STEM and English. Student performances as well. Yep, there we go. Student performance, so looking to improve the scores and performance on AP exams, more qualifications for college level courses, and really increase the student rigor in AP and pre-AP classes, because there's a benefit to students across the board, not just those enrolled in AP classes. And then the student college success, and there's some fantastic data that Mass Insight has on their website that really follows and tracks the students who participate in AP classes with teachers who were supported through Mass Insight and their success once they leave high school. It's pretty impressive stuff. So, the partnership opportunities, the primary thing that we see up front, that's the most obvious, is the teacher training. And the partnership with Mass Insight is generally probably about a 3-year partnership. But we're actually going to start working with them this year at no charge. The cost to work with Mass Insight is considerably less than the other training opportunities that exist out there, partially because they're underwritten by other organizations. And one of their main hallmarks is you don't pay per teacher to attend training. You have a one fee for the entire district. And their intent is to essentially build the bench, get as many people within the STEM and English classes trained in AP classes. Whether they're teaching it that year or may teach it in the future, it's really important and a real great benefit to our high school to have as many teachers trained that way. They will use those trainings in their classes that are not AP classes as well, increasing the rigor. So that's, but there is training that is available for history, world language, and art teachers as well. Ongoing professional development, so it's not just the one-time week-long training that goes on. They have ongoing PD, they have curriculum directors who come into the schools and will do coaching with some of our staff. And then there's student opportunities. The Mass Insight runs AP STEM Saturday sessions. They run mock AP exams. All of that is at no charge to any of our students. All that is built in. So, the next one. There we go. All right. So the Summer Institute is really the big thing for the training. It's a week-long training academy for teachers of AP subjects. It's held at Bridgewater State. It's a convening of AP teachers across the state. And they basically take over the whole campus at Bridgewater. The trainers are current AP teachers, certified by the College Board. A lot of opportunity for networking. And the specific focus really works on creating a syllabus, unit plans, lesson plans, exam with AP exam as well, practice scoring, developing instructional strategies, model plans. So it's a lot of the work that our teachers really, some have done training. We did training in Vermont several years ago, and teachers would go, individual teachers would go. But this is basically taking a vast number of our high school staff and sending them together for a week-long institute over the summer. One more. There's one more slide. There we go. And then the benefits for Pentucket. It's like we talked about, building that deeper pool of teachers for AP classes. There's a lot of benefit to that. We'll see that in the subjects that aren't AP as well. Connecting AP teachers with what's going on elsewhere. We think that's really important, that we're not just an insular instructional community. The coaching relationships, for instance. All the students are going to benefit. We talked about that. And the AP students engaged with that support network. We talked about the mock AP exams and the Saturday sessions. Again, no cost for any of our students. And then actually there's, for any students who have cost prohibitive family situations to take the actual AP exams, Mass Insight has scholarship opportunities. So it takes away any barrier for any student to participate in AP. And we think that's really some really great opportunities in emulating the best teaching practices for all students. So that's, there we go. Nope, wrong way. I think that's the last one. So just a couple brief slides. We wanted to update you on what our intention is moving forward. We won't be in a formal agreement as far as paying them to work with us until next year, but Mass Insight is already going to begin to work with our staff, and they've already come and done some work with our department chairs, and they're coming later this month in January to begin work with some of the teachers who already teach them. Teach the AP classes, and then we'll continue to do that work throughout this year, and they're doing that for free. Entertain any questions or dialogue?
That sounds great.
Mr. Hodges?
Yeah, when you say that one of the offsprings for students is to increase the rigor in AP, I've always thought that AP courses was the rigor. It was always a step above the honors or whatever label we had for outstanding academics. So what do you exactly mean when you say increase the rigor?
Two parts to that. The first part is ensuring that the rigor of the class as designed is preparing students to do well on the exam. We have some areas within our AP offerings where we haven't always performed particularly well, or we've seen some decreases in performance. So we want to ensure that the best practices that are aligned with good outcomes for students are what's in place. So the rigor of the actual AP class. The other benefit to it is increasing the rigor of all instruction. So if one of our teachers teaches one AP class, they're teaching 4 other classes in the same department. Those other 4 classes benefit because the teacher is taking those instructional routines and strategies and they're being applied in the other subjects.
Okay.
So in general, because also it's so many of our staff that will participate in it, it's at no cost to them. They actually get a stipend for attending. It's all paid for by Mass Insight. All of that is included. And actually in the first year, Mass Insight gives us half of our feedback at the end of the year to put towards a lot of these continuing trainings. So
Thank
just
you.
a great opportunity.
Emily?
When you say next year, do you mean so the teachers will be able to do that this coming summer, because that's
Yes.
next fiscal year?
Correct. Yep. So they'll get some benefit for the rest of this year. But
Except
the
the
Summer
July.
Institute
Yeah.
is in July at Bridgewater State. Yep.
Anyone else? Thanks, Ben.
You're welcome.
Next up, we have update of the superintendent's goals.
All right. So thank you, Madam Chair, school committee members, and I think the public now has access, or always had access, but just updating you on my superintendent's goals for the 2021-2022 school year. First goal was participation in the superintendent consultancy group. As you would expect, I've been participating in that. They actually did cancel the meeting in December, but our next meeting is slated for next Friday. Not only am I in my capacity there, you listen to people, you hear the problems that are coming out, you help troubleshoot, and you hear some of the same challenges other districts have. We talk those through, and I've actually presented at one of the second meeting I presented. Second goal, data-driven instruction. We talk a lot about formative assessment, utilizing iReady, doing that at least 3 times a year. We've done that. The middle school and the elementary schools have all done their assessments in the fall. They're coming up in the next month, they'll have had their second assessment. And even after the first assessment, when you do that, they've had all their data meetings, sat down, looked at the data. My role, I go in, I talk with the principals, and that's what we talk about. Every month I meet with the principals, and we talk about their data. What does it look like? How does it look? What's changing? So you see these numbers, what does that mean? And when we have the second set of data, it'll be interesting, because then they'll be able to run an analysis on it and say, hey, here's how we're progressing towards what those goals are. And a lot of them have those incorporated in their school improvement plans. So the school councils will be able to look at that as well and see how well they're progressing towards what they were looking to achieve. The planning and the transitioning into the new middle high school, I reported to you last week that we definitely have run into, I don't want to say a roadblock, but DESE is not giving us time to just do the remote learning on a snow day, that we are having to take the 5 days no matter what. So the question is, what happens on the 6th day? Hopefully we don't have to get there. But if we do, I know what my preference is, and my preference is to do everything we can do to make sure we get into that new building when schools needs to start, and preferably before, because not only do the students need to get acclimated there, so too do the teachers and the administrators. They need to know what's going on in their built rooms, how to use some of the new technology that's going to be there, just even navigating their ways around. On a weekly basis, obviously, I think you all know this, but Thursdays are my building days, and sometimes Thursdays spill into Fridays, Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays. But all we do all day are just meetings about the building. It's stuff that's, some of it's general, some of it's extremely detailed and in the weeds, but that is a huge part of what we do. MSBA is involved in that. Vertex is our owner's project manager. Durham Whittier and WT Rich, those are the groups who are always at the table. Let's see. Final goal on there was development on the updated strategic plan. Well, Mr. Adams will certainly give those updates every time we meet. But we did create the last meeting, a new schedule. So we're developing the survey this month. We'll deploy the survey next month of March. In April, we'll analyze the results of the survey. In May and June, we'll draft a new development of the plan. And sometime in the summer, either June or sometime in the summer or August, we'll have a draft in front of the school committee for a new strategic plan. But I think those meetings have been going pretty well. Yes, Mr. Laughlin, I don't know. Ms. Belzani, we meet, we talk, and we try to come up with what's important, what needs to be included. And we've got a
survey.
of the
So
whole
it's
district
all
and
stakeholders.
all stakeholders.
And that is the,
Great.
Are you optimistic about DESE giving you an exception for that inclement weather that's cited on the 4th page?
so I'll tell you that when I report to DESE, listen, Friday we had a snow day here. And if you came here on the weekend, Saturday or Sunday, from the circle, from the new parking lot, the temporary parking lot at the high school, all the way up to right here, it was still 4 inches of snow. And it was squished and it was gross. And the reason why was they know, the people working on the job know they have to get it done. And however many inches of snow we got was not going to stop them because they understand the timeline. And if the contractors understand the timeline, I would think that DESE would also understand.
I agree.
We cannot be putting ourselves in a position where, we're pushing dates back, and then expecting the job to get done on time because they have to abate, demo, and then do, like I said, they have to put in the roads, they have to put in the parking lot. I mean, there's so much that has to happen where the current high school is currently sitting that we cannot afford to take additional time. So I would think they would understand, especially the complexities. And if they did, I would have every one of those groups, or Whittier, Vertex, WT Rich, the MSBA, ask them to write letters just to say, hey, here's the situation. And I think they would understand.
Okay, thanks.
I wouldn't be surprised though if they said, can you do a Saturday or something like that? I have my own opinions on that.
Anyone else? Thank you for that update.
Sure.
Next up is our historical budget contract presentation.
Yeah.
Very
So, get comfortable. We're going to go over a lot of numbers here. I found it interesting. This is obviously, we're going into here, my 4th budget season. And of course, in the first one, we were at the building project. And the second one, we were just got thrown into COVID at the end of it. There's always the struggles of what do we want to add, what do we not want to add. But we are in budget season right now. I know Mr. LeBrecq has been very busy working, trying to get all numbers, get estimates. I know today he was able to open up the bids for transportation, out-of-district transportation, and in-district transportation. So a lot of that's going to come together in the next few months. We're guessing the governor will come out with his budget somewhere around the 25th of January, and that's kind of one of those pieces that will help us know where we stand. But one of the things we haven't necessarily done is really talked about or thought about where are we? Like, where are we relative to other districts that are similar to us? Where are we relative to our neighbors? So I thought it'd be really important or useful to look at that through a couple of different tools. And those 2 different tools are per pupil expenditure and net school spending. And the reason why those tools are important is because they're the same. Like, it's the same, it's a constant in every school district. There's net school spending, there's per pupil expenditure. It's a number you can quantify, and we'll go over all of those, what's incorporated in them. So in this presentation, you're going to hear 3 different terms: DART districts, CAL districts, and neighboring districts. So a DART district, those are districts that the state says, these are the districts that are most similar to you. And I have a whole slide to show you what that is. But they're the districts that are most similar to you based on your demographics, your ability to pay, all of that. CAL is the Cape Ann League, and they're only included in this if they were a DART district or if they're in neighboring districts. The neighboring districts are all the districts that are around us, with the exception of one. Any guesses which one not? Haverhill, yes. Haverhill's budget is well over $100 million. So the scope of the scale there is not anywhere near what ours is. So it's a completely different. So our DART district. Our DART district, DART stands for District Analysis and Review Tools. It's what they typically use to do data. But they group you together based on your similarities in demographics, assessment, student support, finance, and achievement gap. Whatever you have, small, big. So that's how they adjusted. In this analysis, we took what we have for DART, where our DART districts are for this year, and took it back to 2008 for the per pupil expenditure, and 2012 for the net school spending, because that's as far back as it goes. Some of these DART districts change annually, as you can imagine. Something passes an override, or the gap increases, or what some of the numbers change. But for the most part, they're similar. So our DART districts, the districts that are most similar to us, according to the state, like, again, I have not made up any of this information, none of this. This is all factual stuff here. So Grafton, Hamilton Wenham, which is a regional school, Hanover, King Philip, which is a regional school, Longmeadow, Masco, regional school, Newburyport, North Reading, and Sandwich. So the Cape Ann League schools, and you'll notice here, this is important to know, like, one of the schools that's on here that we always think we're really similar to is right there, Triton. Triton is not a DART district, so the state, we are not more similar to them than we are like Masco, more similar to Masco than we are to Triton. And we'd have to really delve into why that is. I don't get to answer that question, I don't know. But the answer is, my guess is that Salisbury is a much different town than any other towns we have to compare. Yeah, go ahead, Ms. Wonder.
When they're talking about Masco, they're still just talking about the
Yes.
for Masco, not the tri-town.
Correct. It's not talking about the individual elementaries of Boxford, Topsfield, and Middleton. That's
So
right.
there's no comparison with the elementary portion.
No, well, they would if they thought their elementary schools were similar to ours, but for some reason Masco is, but and it could.
Weird to me that that's like
Yeah.
really comparing to part of our district.
Yep. My guess is it probably has to do with assessments and achievement gap, would be my guess. So the Cape Ann League district, so these are so if they're a DART or one of our neighbors, so you can see Amesbury, Georgetown, Hamilton Wenham, we already recognize as a DART school, Masco's a DART, Newburyport's a DART, North Reading's a DART, and Triton's in here because they border us. And those are the four that border us, and of course Newburyport is a DART. So there it is again, I just mentioned that a neighboring district, Haverhill's over $100 million. So this term is a very, very, very important term, per pupil expenditure. Now, over the last, let's say, 2 years, I would always refer to this as PPE, but you can't do that. Because if you refer to PPE, people think you're talking about these. And so per pupil expenditure, and that is you look at all of the operating expenses that a district has, and you divide it by the number of students. So let's break that down. Oops. Your operating expense, that's all the general funds, grants, donations, it's all the money, the revolving accounts, it's everything. The one thing it's not is the debt services. Debt services, anybody know what what's an example of a debt service? Very recently, when I look way over there's an example of a debt service. Way over, like I'm looking through the wall behind the high school. Building, the new building. That amount of money is not included in per pupil expenditure. That's its own separate thing. So, but every cost is included except for debt service. So, the number of students, how do you determine how many students you have? Well, the state looks at when they calculate PPE, and that's the data I'm using the state's data. It's the full-time equivalent. So what that means is they look at a student, and how many students did you have throughout the course of the year on average? So if I arrived in December, my membership doesn't count as a 1.0. My membership counts as a December, January, February, March, April, May, June. I get 7. So if you're here from start to finish, you get the full 1.0. So it's the full-time equivalent average. So it's not necessarily an even number. It's not going to be 2,259. 2,259 is the number I say all the time because that's how many students we are averaging in the month of January. It could be 2,259.7 by the state. So great slide here. So you can see, I just note here, I am using January's 2022 numbers. Yes?
Does that include the students who are in out-of-district?
Yes. Yep. So I am using, it includes the students who are out of district that we're responsible for, but not a student who goes to Whittier, not a student who might go to Essex Tech. It's only students that are considered Pentucket students.
Some-
It includes school choice.
Yes, includes school choice.
But might include like the consortium, but wouldn't include students who private pay to.
That is correct. Like if someone goes to St. John's, then it does not include that. So I'm using the January, this month's number, 2,259 students, when I calculate things. So these are very pithy slides. There's a lot of information. So the 13-year per pupil average, this is the Pentucket compared to the state averages. So over 13 years, you can see it right here. State spent $14,738.29. Pentucket, $13,242. So we're behind by $1,496.16 per student each year. So what does that mean in dollars? That means over 13 years, we're averaging being behind $3,379,825.44 a year. A lot of money. So you break it down to the 5-year average. The 5-year, state's gone up to 16.5, Pentucket's gone up to 15.6. It's nice, the 5-year average looks great because we're closing a gap. You can see the difference on the right-hand side is $848.22 a year, which doesn't seem like that's big of a difference, but that is just under $2 million in our budget. Then we run into the red flag. This fiscal year 20, so fiscal year 21, we do not have the data for. I'm assuming the state's struggling to get all that because you try to figure out what people spent with their ESSER money and all of those, and what they haven't spent. But fiscal year 20, and this was a trend over the last 3 years, in my raw data you can see it. State's gone up to 17.5, we're at 16.3, that's just under $1,300 below per student. So we've gone up. We were at $1.9 million a year behind. Now we're back up to $2.8 million a year behind. Again, this is just compared Pentucket to the state average. And it doesn't matter, like the state average is small school districts, big school districts. It's just the average per pupil expenditure. So we'll look at the Cape Ann League. The schools that I mentioned before, they're at the Cape Ann. 13-year average on them. $14,288.24. Pentucket, $13,242. The 13-year average difference is $1,046. If we added that into Pentucket, we'd be getting an additional $2.3 million. 5-year average, and this progressively gets worse. The 5-year average, Cape Ann, 16.8. Well, I'm not going to read it to you. You can see it. At the end of the 5-year average, the difference is $1,172 a student, which comes out to $2.6 million a year. And then if you look at just last year, fiscal year 20, sorry, 2 years ago, we fell behind $1,828.25 a student per year, which equates to $4.1 million. So relative to, again, that's Amesbury, Newburyport, Triton, North Reading, Mascot. We're not talking about schools that we don't compete with. These are all schools we compete with. So versus our neighbors, excluding Havel, again, excluding Havel. You understand the format here. So I'll just look at the right-hand side. 13 years, we're doing all right. $529. And that's, but even $529, even though it doesn't seem like a significant amount, that's $1.2 million. The 5-year average goes up, not significantly, but it goes to 1.295, or 1.3 million. And then again, fiscal year 20, it does not look good. That's a staggering number, $1,267.96 a year per student difference compared to our neighbors. So who are we talking about? Amesbury, Triton, Georgetown, Newburyport. And that's where we are relative to them fiscal year 20. So, and that 2.8 million is if we were funding at the average, that's where we'd have $2.8 million more in our budget. So there's 14 districts. If you include Pentucket, there's 14 districts. If you look at just per pupil expenditure, Out of the 14, we rank 10th. Behind us, in order, is Hanover, Marshfield, Georgetown, and Grafton. If you look at the 5-year, we rank 9th. And behind us is Longfield, Georgetown, Hanover, Marshfield, and Grafton. And if you look at fiscal year 20, we're in the same space. We're still 9th. So it's great. Like we've gone from 10th to 9th. I don't know how people like being 9th. So different concept, net school spending. So this is part of Chapter 70, and I'm going to explain this as simply as I can. You can read this. 100%. A municipality has to fund the school at 100%. That's what they're required to do. If they fall below 95, if they decide that we can only fund 94%, they get penalized and they pay all sorts of fines and things like that. Greg and I talked about it. He might be able to tell you what those are, but it's not good. So 100% is like baseline, is 0. So I'm not going to talk in terms of 148% or 110%. I'm going to talk in terms of 48% and 10%, the amount over the net school spending. So what is not included in net school spending? Transportation and long-term debt. Long-term debt, anybody want to give an example? Yes, building, long-term debt. So that's not included in net school spending. So let's look at this and hope that things are better with net school spending than they are with per pupil expenditure. So a little bit of a different format, but it's still Pentucket compared to the state. So on average, 20%, so municipalities are funding their schools at 120% or 20% above. Pentucket, 13.13. 8 years is as far back as I was able to go. So that's a difference of 6.87. I just want to make that point very clear. The data the state has only goes back 8 years. If it went back 20 years, I'd have gone back 20 years, but it only went back 8. For per pupil expenditure, it only went back 13 on the DESI website. That's what I was able to find. The 3-year average, so we're behind, in the 8-year average, we're behind 6.87. The 3-year average compared to the state, we're behind 8.8%. And in fiscal year 19, which again, different than, that's the latest data they have, we are behind 10%. There is a pattern here that follows the same pattern that we saw with per pupil expenditure. Smaller, bigger, bigger. How about versus those schools that we identified as in the Cape Ann League? This is not a slide that should make anybody happy. 8-year average debt, we are 16.34% behind. 5-year, 20.83 behind. And in fiscal year 19, we were 27.14% behind. Now I will tell you, if you look at the raw data, and I'll have this stuff up on the website when we get sometime middle of next week, I'll put this stuff on the website, go through and look at it. But you can look and say Masco, which I understand, Masco was in the Cal and they recently moved out, so they're included in this because I had to go back to 2018, to 2008, and then here 2012. But Masco, yeah, has a huge percentage, but Georgetown offsets that. So again, it's not like, there's not crazy districts who are doing crazy things, and that's shown here more than anywhere else. I'm going to say this again. This excludes Haverhill. It does include Georgetown, Triton, Newburyport, Amesbury. 8-year average, we're 12.5% behind. 5-year average, 16.9. And for fiscal year 19, 21.5%. Amesbury, they started paying much bigger numbers the last, like 2 or 3 years in the raw data. So again, that's how much of the town's paying you. Here's the minimum I have to do, 100%. So on average, our neighboring districts, on the 8-year, they're paying 125.63. They're paying 25.63% more to their schools. Our towns are paying 13.13% more to their schools. And you go down, the biggest one is our towns, it increased, right? It went 13.13. So if I'm a taxpayer, I'm like, say, look, 13.13 to 14 to 16 by itself, yes. Those are increases. But relative to everything else that's going on around us, I mean, yes, there are increases, but that gap has widened. On all three, and even in the raw data, there is not one green number. Green being anything in the positive compared to any of the other schools. So, again, if you rank these out, this gets not as pretty as per pupil expenditure, but if you rank out compared against all 14 districts, we ranked 11th out of 14th. Behind is King Philip, Grafton, Marshfield. 5-year average is 11th out of 14th, same 3. Fiscal year 19, we are 13th out of 14. Only Marshfield's behind us. So, one of my favorite games to play, what if? You can what if things to death, right? So what I wanted to do was put this together in a way that you could kind of wrap your heads around what does that actually mean? And so I have a little piece of this. I'm going to use $80,000 as an average position because it might be a teacher, it might be a custodian, it might be an administrator, so we'll just use $80,000. Safe number to use. But I want everybody to understand, when you look at these numbers, never in a million years if someone gave me $2 million, say, yep, I want $2 million worth of employees. There's curriculum. Curriculum has to happen. There's things we have to buy to keep the schools clean. There are other things other than just employees. But I think when you use employee numbers, that you know what a teacher is. So, what if? If Pentucket was funded at the fiscal year 20 state Cal or boarding district average. So if we were funded at the state average, fiscal year 20 state average, there would be an additional 35.9 positions that we would have. At the Cape Ann League average, 51.6 positions. Think about that for a second. Bordering districts. I'm going to say it and I'm going to say it again. That's Georgetown, Triton, Newburyport, and Amesbury. If we funded at their average amount, we'd have 35.8 additional positions. So what if we were just funded at 2 that we commonly get compared to? Note that one of these is Triton is not a DART district. North Reading is a DART district. But these are the 2 we're most commonly compared to around local. Oh, we're similar to Triton. Okay. Well, if we get funded at Triton, that's 65.8 additional positions. I'm going to go back to this just to. Bordering districts here. See that funded at $2.8 million? Bordering districts. Triton's a bordering district. If you just take Triton, it's 65.8. That number shoots way up. And if you compare it with North Reading, it's an additional 30 positions. So that's my game of what if. If we were funded the same way as the average of what's around us, what would that mean? So again, the 2 key things we're looking at here are per pupil expenditure and net school spending. And there's some things like perspectives that you always need to consider. One is, and number 1 there is the most important. If we all thought it was a smart idea to do a one-time catch-up, hey, we want to go ahead and we want to make up that $5.2 million difference. Well, there's a reason that we're $5.2 million behind Triton. One, they have to pay. We got in to regionalize earlier. So they fell behind, so they have to actually pay. So is that about right, $3 million? There's something additional.
The Chapter 70 money? We get way more Chapter 70 than that. It's
Right.
more than $3 million even.
Yeah, it was a big difference.
It's a big difference. Yeah.
But if we were trying to catch up to that, we would sink the towns. If the towns said yes, which they obviously they would not. They're like, we can't even, if we do this, we're going to lose our police, our fire. We can't do this. So a one-time correction, we are just too far behind for a one-time correction. This is not something we're going to solve at a town meeting in April and then a ballot in May. Not going to solve, can't do it with a one-time. Second thing to take into consideration when we're going through the budget. You know, you all received your tax bills recently. And the towns are now paying for the money that we borrowed to build that 7 to 12 projects. We have gone through a decade of not having any increases of Prop 2.5 overrides. The building projects was a vote. But that does not mean that the services that we needed, we were getting them. It's still, that doesn't change that. We definitely had it. But it's important to keep in mind that people are already paying for that new building. And some of them are seeing a bigger bill this year for the first time. So third thing, if now is a bad time, like if you think about all this, you're like, hey, you know what, now's a bad time, the economy's not good. Okay, when is the good time? Or if you think now is a good time, what's a bad time? Who defines that? And I don't have an answer for any of you on that, just something you need to consider. Fourth thing, so what's the return on the investment? If we go and we get after all this and we want to add in a bunch of money, what is the return the towns get on their investment? And so when we get to the next meeting, we start talking about these are the things we like to do. Here's why we like to do them. The why explains the return on the investment. Fifth thing on here, state's going to come out with, hey, this is how much Groveland, Merrimack, and West Newbury have to pay. We don't get to control that number. That is just what they have to pay. A big part of that, in Groveland and Merrimack in particular, is going to be big increases because home values have gone way up. And the formula views that as the town's ability to pay. So when that happens, they're going to see big increases. And that leads you to the last one. So this question of, are the residents in the towns, are there some there that are house rich and cash poor? So trying to force them to pay taxes is too much for them? But more importantly, is that your job to answer that question? Or is it their job? Should they be the ones that have to answer that question? So those are just, this is my last slide, but just perspectives that I think are really important. They're not, none of these have answers. None of these questions have answers. I always have a very postmodern view of things. There is no black and white. There's things that are so fluid because everything's situational. But those are things that we need to consider. But go ahead, Mr. Hodges.
Do you think this would be worth sharing with the selectmen and the various finance committees?
Yep, absolutely.
Because I can guarantee you, you couldn't on one hand count the number of people that realize that in any Groveland town meeting, and what you don't know, you can't fix.
Right. So I mean, we've all been to town meetings, and when you go there, you never go into a meeting, in a town meeting, or a meeting with the legislature thinking they know the information you're coming to talk about. But we will definitively be putting stuff out, just letting, hey, this information's here. Oh, absolutely. Once we have everything together, again, we're just getting started. Like, we'll share that with FinComs in particular, going to be important. Just because they'll be able to wrap their heads around it, because they know what their financial situation is. But it's going to be hard for them until they know what the bill is that they're going to be asked for by the state to pay and fund our school. 100%. It's going to be hard to really know what's that going to mean for each town. But I think what's not deniable are these numbers. This is not a debatable. None of these numbers are debatable. These are all very real, factual numbers. And again, these were two constants I knew we could control. Like every district has to deal with this. You can measure net school spending, you can measure per pupil expenditure. So I didn't go into this going, hey, you know what, I'm going to show how far behind, because I didn't know. I just started filling in all the information. And then once you fill in all the information and you see it, did I have a good idea that we were behind? Yes, you've heard me talk about this for a really long time, right? My second year, when we added assistant principals, the thought that my prior district, I thought that we would have school buildings without assistant, that just doesn't make sense because there's so much that has to be done. The thought that we would run a district without any curriculum support personnel, I know Dr. Doherty was going to be here today. We heard from Ms. Hogan last time, Ms. Ellis. Those are three people that had a huge impact since they arrived in August. But we're not even paying them out of tax money. We're paying them out of our ESSER funds. Because they're helping with the curriculum, making sure that they're there to support teachers and that they're able to help find ways to catch our kids up. All districts have those positions. We've never had them. But again, you know, these are decisions when we come down to putting a budget together. We have to decide, like, what do we want to do? What is it that's important? When we come to the table February 1st, I'll be in the budget. Craig will talk about it a little bit. We have ideas of where we think we need to start, and I would not support a, hey, let's get there, let's catch up to everybody, because we are so far behind that trying to catch up to everybody is not a tenable request for the towns. It just is not. That said, I will say and validate, we heard some of the parents to say, like, you take that into consideration. Teachers have been doing an outstanding job in the classrooms. Our classroom sizes are extraordinarily low compared to what Mr. Conway or I would have been used to in our prior districts. Next year, we're slated to be well under 21 on average in all elementary classes. That's unheard of. So if you take that into consideration, you have to start thinking, okay, what are we missing? And that's where I look at, okay, where is our special education support folks? Where is our secondary curriculum support folks? Where is our elementary support folks? And they just don't exist. Prior to Chris Kelly, where was your assistant superintendent? Didn't exist. You've seen and heard the presentation Brent does. Not having that position does not put the district in a good situation. It takes out the curriculum part he brings to the table, and all of a sudden it puts it on the principals who are trying to do everything in the world to talk to parents, work with kids, be in their meetings. They don't have the ability to sit down and have one-to-one conversations with teachers half an hour every single day. The addition of the assistant principals, sure, that was a huge help. So, we will always get the job done, because it's Pentucket. I will do everything I can, my last breath, to make sure things get done. But this was a very eye-opening experience that Mr. Hodges, I absolutely will share with everybody, and I'll put it up, it'll go up on the website.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Does anyone else have anything to discuss or questions?
Nice to know you had my back.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thanks, Justin. That was a lot of work, and I appreciate you giving us that information. It's really eye-opening. Okay. Now we're on to the budget book update. Greg.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Normally, this is the point where we start talking about the budget going forward as presented to you in the format that we give it in the book. Normally, I would give that to you the second week of January, just before the governor's budget comes out. But as you've changed your meeting schedule and things in central office have been kind of chaotic, I don't think waiting until February 1st is probably going to be advantageous to get a look at it, nor will it be ready for tonight. When I say not ready for tonight, I mean I've got every section done except for the first part, which is the narrative. So what my goal is to get these things sort of done and have them delivered to your homes prior to February 1st. So at least you'll have some chance to look at them before February 1st, and then give them to the towns after your meeting on the February 1st. It's more, I don't want to say chaotic, it's more of a guess of anything I've ever seen in my life. We're talking about a budget for a middle high school that's being collapsed into one building. We're talking about 4 union contracts that are not settled. The superintendent mentioned transportation goes out to bid for next year, our contracts are up. Not the ideal time to have your transportation contract come to an end, is this year, with them having trouble getting bus drivers, the cost of fuel, all sorts of fun things. Not ideal. So we will continue to work through it. I'll continue to get information. And obviously, again, the governor's budget will come out, as he said, the 25th. We were hoping for it to be next week, but it looks like he's going to delay it until the MMA conference, which usually means he has a big announcement that he's going to give municipal aid a big increase, not necessarily education a big increase. Typically, when he goes to that conference, that's what you'll see. I will tell you that the numbers we've got, again, these are the numbers we'll work with. Usually I hand you a budget that's, you know, 400,000, 500,000, 600,000 out of balance, and we begin to work at it as we see the governor's budget and new numbers come to light and we talk through it. I had to at some point put a stop to it. It was just too many guesses rolling around in my head. Educated guesses, but still guesses. The budget book I'm going to hand you in narrative format is going to show a deficit of about $1.85 million. So, as the superintendent pointed out to you, this is a long time coming. Built into that, obviously, is, as you talked about, some additional special ed support things and a huge increase for transportation. Just huge as in this. It was well over $400,000. Just without changing a bloody bus route. Again, and this isn't, again, watching what other districts have been opening their bids over the last 2 years, this is what they're seeing. 15, 20% increases. So that's where I'll be our starting point. Again, my goal is to get it to you before your February 1st meeting so you can have some time to digest it. Obviously, once you get it, if you have any questions, let me know. But by the February 1st meeting, we should be able to have a conversation, at least have it in front of us, and I can start to get your input about what you'd like to see going forward. All of us, how far you want to go, what you want to push. We'll also have, at that point, have the governor's budget. As the superintendent talked about, the net minimum spending totals will come to the towns. He is correct. We've been warned by everybody that small towns are going to see that number pushed up. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean a bad thing if it's pushed up equally. If they just added it all to each 3 towns, but that's not what's been happening here. It's been digging into 1 or 2 towns specifically over the last 2 or 3 years. And if that's the case, more of the shift goes to those 2 towns as always. But again, at least we'll know now what we're looking at, and we can have to begin the conversation. So that's about what you're going to see when you hand it off, when I hand it off to you, and that's where we'll move forward from there and just start talking about it. Normally, as I know Chris likes to have presentations up, this is the biggest guess of a budget I've ever seen in my life. We could have presentations, and they would be based solely on guesses.
Yeah, and I will say, one of the things I've tried to do, knowing that Dad was going to comment, and just based on this information, I talked to Kat, she presented on the school website that Anna mentioned. And I told her if we could put a section up on the website that's very visible, people can click on it, it's kind of like an education piece up there. People who aren't going to watch the video aren't going to show up, just so they have an idea of where things stand and what the moving pieces are.
Do you have anything you'd like me to add to it, or anything that your thoughts are running through as I finish this up? By all means, let me know, now or in the future.
Appreciate all the work you're doing.
Yes, sir. I wish it was work. Work has a finality to it. But thank you.
Do you need any extra coins to flip?
No, I've got a whole drop full of coins.
Okay.
There's
Does
some
anyone have
visible
any
pendants
questions
that
for
I
us,
put in
Greg?
the magnifier. Sorry, what?
No, I was just asking if anyone had any questions for you.
More concerns.
Well, it's all a concern.
It's all a concern, but
Okay, so our next order of business is for our meeting schedule, we would like to add a meeting for the public hearing on the 15th, which we do not have on the calendar this year. Excuse me? February, sorry, yes. So, we'll meet February 1st on our regular scheduled meeting to discuss the budget, and then we'll have our public hearing on the 15th, where people can come and ask questions.
Same time?
Same time, 6 o'clock. All right, and that's in place of February 22nd because that is school break. So that's why we would like to have it on February 15th. And then we will be voting on the budget on March 1st, which is the Tuesday after vacation. So, do we need a vote for that?
No.
Okay.
I can send everyone an email and write it down if that helps.
That would be great. I'd appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, and our last, I think it's our last order of business here.
Last thing on that.
Yes, it is.
Is the West Newbury opening of the Whittier School Board. We have a member of the community that serves on the Whittier School Board for West Newbury, and that expires on March 31st. The Whittier's superintendent's admin is calling the man that has been serving, and he usually does do it at, re-ups, but we're not sure if he's going to this year, so Ms. Knapp is going to put it in the newspaper, and in case anyone's interested in serving on that school committee as well, we would love to hear from you. So, and that's it. Does anyone have any questions? No? Could I please have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor? Okay, thanks, everyone. A lot to digest.